Hello and welcome to the Team Draft Super League. I'm Steve Rubin, joined here by Hall of Famer Ben Stark. How's it going, man?
Going pretty good. How you doing?
Pretty okay. Interesting draft. A lot of powerful cards being passed around, not necessarily in people's decks and whatnot. How did your draft start?
Yeah, I started with the Hydra, the 4-mana 3/3 Vigilance green thing. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't see a lot of green. I mostly saw blue pack one.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really sure like where I was gonna go. I just I ended up rounding it out and basically playing blue green. But I definitely could have came off green pretty easily. I definitely didn't see much.
Yeah.
How about you?
I definitely thought that you were in green, but it was kind of a situation where I first picked a Hope Tender out of a pretty weak pack. And then you passed me the Oasis Ritualist with a Puncturing Blow, and I took the Ritualist. You know, I know that normally when you draft the ramp deck, you kind of want to get the good cards first, but it was a situation where I didn't mind solidifying myself into green, but as the pack went on, it was kind of very apparent green wasn't open, and I kind of tried to maneuver myself into red-black, but at the same time, I know that if I just move out of green, then pack 2, I'm going to be shipping all the green cards, so I kind of just stubbornly stayed in green. My deck's okay, but not great, I would say.
Yeah, that can be a good team draft strategy. I think people worry too much about finding the open colors in team draft. I think what's more important is if you're pretty confident that you're not seeing a color, that you prioritize that color in the other pack so that you make sure that you're not passing a bunch of good cards to somebody who can play them. You know? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I got enough serviceable cards, and especially when some of my cards are like Hope Tender and Oasis Ritualist, which help me splash, it's kind of a situation where I can always stay base green and kind of, cut you back while still getting good cards.
Right. The key strategy-wise is if you feel like, I'm green passing to you, then in pack 2, you take green cards over your other colors, even if the other color cards are better, to make sure I don't get green cards. But if you just move off green completely, now you have to hate good green cards, or you just pass me all the best green. So it's a lot more about prioritizing the colors that you think are being underdrafted. You let those cards go. You just make people hate them or they come back to you. We saw Luis do a really good job of that week 1 when we played against the Scottsdale Foundation. It was clear nobody at the table was blue. And so what he was doing when he was drafting blue-red was taking even bad red cards over good blue cards because he knew that somebody would either have to hate the blue cards or he would just table them. And in a case like this draft, it's good drafting for you to stay in green, even if you think I'm green, because you just have to make sure to prioritize green in pack 2. Take every green card you can away from me.
Yeah, and it's also kind of, you're not actively trying to confuse your opponents by doing what you were saying, but it can happen. For instance, in this draft, while I started off in green-black, as I saw red was coming, I knew that red was kind of open, but at the same time, I was passing good red cards. And I passed an open fire to you and a puncturing fire to Luis. And you guys didn't expect me to be red. And I ended up getting a Sand Strangler from Luis and an Insult Injury from you. So it can kind of backfire potentially. Obviously, I'm splashing those cards, so they're not great in my deck and whatnot. But it's kind of a situation where, if I'm taking, like you said, Luis in week 1 was blue, the only blue drafter, but he was taking the red card, the people next to him might think he's not blue, and they might be more likely to ship him a bomb that they open.
And that definitely worked for you here. There's no shot I would have passed you that Insult Injury if I thought you were very likely to be red. But since you sent me a 5th pick open fire or something in pack 2, I thought it was highly unlikely you were red. So I wasn't worried about passing it.
Yeah, I was conveniently, there was a Tormented Venom in my pack, which was one of my, which is on color cards, so I just ended up taking that for sure. It looks like we're going to see Luis Scott-Vargas play against Alexander Hayne, and I think Alexander Hayne has a pretty good blue-red deck, though if you guys have seen the draft, both my teammates are in blue-red, which in team draft is not an advisable strategy generally, but all right, we're going down to the match right now, I guess, and we'll see Luis Scott-Vargas play against Alexander Hayne. All right, here we are. Looks like we have Luis on blue-black. Luis is a pretty solid hand here.
Yeah, I mean, the old 2-mana 1/1, 4-mana 2/2, just a perfect curve.
Well, he's got the Cycling Desert, which he can maybe find a 3-drop with, and Alex doesn't actually have any real plays other than Blur Blades and Unquenchable Thirst, though. They do line up well against Luis's Ruin Rat. I think that in the draft, actually, us being the players that we are, like, I think that it was really hard for me anyway to get deserts when I needed them for my Sand Strangler and the 3/2 Naga that gets pumped. I know they're picked pretty highly. Like Luis second picked the Ifnir Deadlands that I passed him.
Yeah, I snatched up one Oasis, and that's the only desert I have, and I have the Hydra that wants a lot of deserts and stuff too.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us value those deserts pretty highly, and also a lot of Unquenchable Thirsts were open, which I think kind of hurt my chances of getting any deserts. All right, Alex is just going to Blur Blades on his main phase.
Doesn't want to take any risks. Wants to make sure he kills that rat.
Yeah. Rat down. I don't exactly know what he's playing. I mean, I guess he's going to do it on combat anyway, he figures, so he might as well just do it. But it's just funny to see,
Yeah, the play is probably right.
Yeah, I don't even know what Luis could have. Like, maybe like a supernatural stamina or something.
And also, do you want to save Rat? That's why I'm making fun of it. But no, the play is probably right. It's just the Rat is such a weak card. It's funny. Sure, you kill it.
Alex is kind of cycling through, casting a Crash through. He has drawn his Locust God, which is something that I imagine Luis is going to have trouble dealing with. So if Alex can
open a God in a team draft, that's not right.
Well, he also opened a Sand Strangler, which is funny because I think Eric ended up getting the Sand Strangler, which obviously you'd rather have the Locust God, but it was not as good as just opening Locust God in a medium pack.
Yeah, but they're the same color, so that even helps him cut Eric.
Yeah, sure. No, it's definitely good. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it seem like it wasn't.
No, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, Sand Strangler and Locust God are pretty close. I'm not even sure in an 8-man, like in a Pro Tour, if I open both of those, which I would take. I would probably take the Locust God, but it's not.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in our limited meeting. I think we determined that the Locust God is just too powerful when you actually get to play it. But there are games when you get run over, or when you committing yourself to 2 colors, obviously is also not ideal. First pick, first pack, but. Looks like Alex drew a Champion of Wits, and another smart open from Alex. See what he does here. He has the option of Unquenchable Thirsting on the Marauder. It doesn't use his mana that efficiently, though, but neither does the Champion, and the Champion isn't going to block anything, so he probably wants to wait to hit the Grimstrider, so I think he's probably going to play Champion. No, it looks like he's going to just Unquenchable Thirst. I mean, this prevents a lot of damage, which is nice when he's got the Locust God to follow up.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting spot. I mean, the Grimstrider is going to be a lot bigger than the 3/3. So I don't know. What would you have done there? I think it's a close play.
I think it's a close play too. The thing about the Champion is normally, like with the Champion, you kind of want to set up, but he actually has 5-drop, 6-drop in his hand already. So I can see like just wanting to wait on that, potentially. Also, the Champion does combo with the Locust God. If he gets the Locust God in play, he gets 2 1/1. Flying haste guys, so I think that could be a consideration there. So I think his play is reasonable.
Yeah, that's probably the reason to wait, because I mean that's pretty broken, and I mean it's pretty hard to kill Locust God. So he probably assumes by waiting he'll get to pull off that combo.
Mm-hmm. Luis is probably going to attack with both because he's got the Splendid Agony. Really good because if Alex doesn't block, he's got the Curse Minotaur. But I'm pretty sure Alex is probably going to block the 4/4 or the 2/3. He's going to end up taking additional damage for blocking the 2/3.
Well, if he blocked the 4/4, it would have been interesting, right? Luis might just let them trade and play the Cursed Minotaur.
Yep.
Or he might not.
Then he still has a Splendid Agony in his hand. That could definitely have made a different game. Alex would be at more life, though, so it's really hard to say. Alex is kind of in a tough spot, actually, even though he has a Locust God. I guess because Luis has
really bad spot.
He's got the Ifnir Deadlands, so actually playing the Locust is not that great. Because he's going to be forced to block.
Yep, and then he's basically locked out of the game if he does that. And I think he knows that, but I don't know if he has like any other great options. He can put out the 2/2 ones.
Yeah, I think he might be getting punished a little bit for Unquenching versus the Marauder, but he would be at such a lower life total that the game might actually be the same. It's possible he needs to just play the Champion. I don't have his deck list, so I don't know exactly what 3-mana or less cards he has.
Yeah,
looks like he's going to start with the Champion.
If he finds like an Unquenchable Thirst or something,
I think he has an unsummon, though. We built 2 blue-red decks on my team, so I can't quite remember who's got what. Looks like he found a Kindled Fury and an Inferno Jet, which the Kindled Fury is actually really nice because he's going to be able to play the Riddle form and hold up the Kindled Fury. Or really nice as in it's one of his good draws here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's that nice. It's okay. I mean, nothing's going to be big enough to take out the Grimstalker Strider, whatever the thing's called, right?
Yeah, but he can block both the other creatures and go to 1. Well, actually, no, it's tough because Luis is going to be able to use his If Near Deadlands or pre-combat play something. We'll see what ends up happening here. Looks like it's going to be Riddle form into Mountain, and he's going to pass the turn.
Well, not Riddle form. He played the Archer.
Oh, the Archer. I meant the Archer.
Yeah, it's not a huge difference. I mean, Luis's only decision now is whether to play the Minotaur or play the Deadlands. I imagine he'll just use the Deadlands. I mean, he can still use it again next turn, and if you put Alex down to 1 blocker, Alex just has to chump. So, I mean, this is a close decision. I'm not really sure what's right. I think I would Deadlands away one of the 2/1s and then attack with all 3 creatures.
Yeah, and it's pretty sick that he drew a land, so he could now just go Deadlands the next 2 turns, stacking his other desert. Looks like he opted to just go for make my guy a 6/6, attack with everything. This way, Alex actually can't let the Grimstrider through because the Spellweaver Eternal is going to drain him for 2. I mean, I think either way, he probably has to chump the Grimstrider. Looks like he's going to ignore blocking the 2/1.
Well, yeah, I mean, now he has to chump the Grimstrider, and he's going to give +1/+1 first strike to eat the 2/3. Now, granted, Luis has no idea that Alex has Kindle Fury in his hand. They don't have Deathless, I don't think, for round 1, and he hasn't seen it. It's game 1. Mm-hmm. Should he have made the Deadlands play? If Alex wanted to make that same play, he would go to 1 life. So then he would have to deal with the 2/1 and everything. But I mean, it's good to get extra creatures out too and everything. Like, I'm not even sure which play is better. I think both plays are totally.
Both plays are really, really good. Like, that on the next turn you can still Deadlands one of the creatures, assuming Hayne pretty much needs Kindled Fury, I think, to stay in the game, and he had it. Looks like he opted to flashback the Champion of Wits. I think that is he dead on board?
He's not dead on board, but he's gonna have
to Flare or the Grim Shredder, yeah,
and go to 1 life.
So, and I don't think he really has a way of coming back against that.
It's gonna have to be a sweeper. I mean,
yeah,
there's gonna be.
He has an Hour of Devastation, but Hayne does not.
That's what I like to hear.
I mean, there was actually a lot of decisions this game from Hayne's side. Like, a lot of things that make limited Magic good, like every turn he's got 2 cards, but only mana for 1. And then he also has like opponent is attacking with obviously a combat trick or whatever. And he has to decide like, am I supposed to block the big guy? Am I supposed to block the little guy and force him to use his mana? But it looks like Luis is going to, I don't think Hayne has outs, and Luis is probably going to win this game, go up 1-0.
Yeah, lots of close plays. Like, when me and you were sitting here and we've both won Pro Tours and we're not sure which play is right, they're probably playing a good game of Magic. Like, yeah, of course. These are just really close, really interesting options. Like that one turn, whether Alex played the Unquenchable Thirst or the Champion, like I have no idea which play was better. This turn, when I was saying like Luis should have probably used the Deadlands, like that's what I would have done, but I'm not saying it's better. Like playing the Cursed Minotaur, it empties your hand, it keeps your Grimstrider out of puncturing blow range. Like there are things it accomplishes,
which Hayne has 2 of. So, all right, we're gonna look to sideboards here. I don't know if there's really anything. I mean, Hayne has a Blazing Volley in his sideboard. He's got unfortunately I forget the name of the card. He's got that blue-red split card that like copies
and does damage.
Yeah, he's pulling it over. I don't know exactly if Luis has much in his sideboard. Looks like he's got a Trespasser's Curse as his only blue or black card I see in his sideboard. I guess a Claim to Fame. So we'll see if these players use their sideboard. We don't see that much sideboarding on Team Draft Super League. There's a lot of hate drafting. Only 6 players, so there are just less cards in the draft.
Look at their sideboards. I mean, Alex has Gideon. He's got Mummies on impeccable timings, Giant Spider, Spidery Grasp. and then a Trial of Ambition, and then look at Luis's sideboard. You know, he's got
two Unraveling Mummies,
yeah, Mummies also, 2 Unraveling, some white ones, the Frontline Devastator, Electrify, the red-green Chariot thing. You know, he's even got, like, is that a green desert in there? Like, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
it would have been good for me for sure if I had it.
Yeah, you don't pass cards to the enemies.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think we're going to see much sideboarding unless Hayne actually is bringing in the Blazing Volley, it looks like.
He really wants to take care of those rats.
Yeah, well, actually, Luis has 4 X1s at 2 mana. Every single one of his Oh, no, he's got 2 Spellweaver Eternals and 2 Ruin Rats. Nothing else, I believe, actually dies to it. But
it's a good board inning against double Spellweaver Eternal. And I mean, Alex saw the Eternal and the Rat last game. And Blue-Black's creatures aren't all that big. Like, for all he knows, Luis has, like, the 4-mana 3/1 flyer or, like, you know, like some other really good targets for Blazing Volley. So I think that makes sense to bring it in.
Yeah, and in this format, there are kind of like 2 kinds of Blue-Black decks. There's, like, cycling decks and then kind of the more aggressive they're also cycling decks, but they're just kind of are low to the ground and don't use much late game. And Luis has kind of got a pretty aggressive blue-black deck. So it makes sense that Hayne would figure there might be more X1s than what he's seen already. Looks like Luis has no lands, so he's going to be mulliganing. Hayne's hand is rather solid, and he's got Champion of Wits again, which is nice. We'll see how he uses it this game. Hopefully he gets into a situation where he can kind of keep up with Luis more this game. It looks like, if anything, he's going to be beating down. So Luis has a reasonable 6-card hand with no 2-drop. Interesting scry with an island on top. Are you going to top or bottom? Yeah, you've got the Cycler, which you're very likely to cycle on turn 2. So I agree.
I'm a big fan of being greedy and, like, getting flooded sucks. Like, he's got like he's got 3 lands already. You want to finish the game with 4 or 5. Like, don't get me wrong. I know you're just setting me up to talk about it, but, like, yeah, I'm all about being greedy on my scries. Like, you know what I mean? Like, flood out is like one of the easiest ways to lose in limited. Send those lands to the bottom.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Even on the play, I think I would bottom that. You know, you have the Cycler, you have Aerial Guide, you have both your colors. Luis actually, I don't think, has that many cards that cost 4 or more. He just happens to have the Grimstrider in his opener. Looks like we get the nice Champion of Wits, Cunning Survivor. Nice little combo. I've never actually seen that before.
Is it +1 or +2?
Whenever you cycle or discard a card. So I think it's only +1, even though he discards 2. But we'll see.
Yeah, I've never seen this before either, to be honest. Nobody plays Cunning Survivor in Constructed, and Champion of Wits is rare, so it doesn't come up that often.
Oh, two triggers, so he does get another damage. We only see the first line of text on the Cunning Survivor. That's going to be our defense for not knowing how that works. Looks like...
I'm not pretending I knew how that worked. I just learned exactly how many +1s it got when the champion happened.
Luis actually opted to not cycle his without weakness. I guess he figures that he can use it later down the line to protect his Grimstrider, or you know, he can always cycle it later. He's already got a 3-drop.
Yeah, there's really not much reason for him to cycle it, because, like you said, he already has a 3 and a 4-drop, so he can always cycle it later. And you're playing against a red deck, like, they probably have removal. It counters removal pretty well.
Of course.
So I mean, yeah, I definitely like not cycling it there.
All right, so he's going to play a 2/2 Grimstrider, which doesn't block very well on this board. Of course, Hayne's actually got a pretty solid hand. He's got another Cunning Survivor, which. It's actually, I don't like the card very much, but once he gets Luis pretty low, it's a pretty dangerous card. Like, he attacks here, and I don't exactly know. You know, Luis hasn't seen deck lists. He doesn't know that Alex probably doesn't have that many Cyclers, so he has to take it. And Alex is going to play a Riddle Form and a Cunning Survivor with 2 spells in his hand. So I guess Luis is really going to need to draw removal, I think.
Yeah, Alex is in a good position to close this game out with that Riddle Form. I mean, it's not doing 11 on board, but if he draws any Cyclers, if he keeps drawing spells, it's gonna be pretty tough for Luis to answer this.
Yeah, there's a Cycler which gives him 7 unblockable damage already. We'll see how he leads off. He's gonna lead off on the Crash Through though.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he wants to cycle the Jet, because I mean the 6 damage is going to be lethal too.
Yeah,
I think if I were Alex, to be honest, this turn I might have just cast Traveler's Amulet and then made sure I got my land.
But if he draws a land off the Crash Through, then he can kind of play the Amulet next turn and have 6 lands guaranteed for the lethal. which is kind of greedy, of course. Like, he can play the Traveler's Amulet first, and then decide if he doesn't draw a land next turn, he can, like, cycle the Jet for damage. I don't know, which they both, I think that might give him more options because he gets to see the card he draws off Crash Through, but...
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going to play the Amulet here, then it makes sense. I just kind of felt like it's another way to trigger Riddle for him, and it's not like he's under any pressure. He's still at 20, and Luis doesn't really have anything going. So I don't know that he needs to be this aggressive with his cards, but I guess he just wants to get Luis really low. Like,
yeah, he actually cycled the Inferno Jet there, which I didn't expect because I don't think Luis actually had.
Yeah, this is not. I mean, listen, Hayne is a great player, but this is not what I would have done this turn. If it were me, I would just cast the Traveler's Amulet to trigger the Riddle form, and then gotten a land and just attacked with that in the Minotaur.
Then you get to scry as well before your next turn if you play it that way.
Right. And like, you get in the damage, you have the Jet to finish them off. I mean, I don't see the need to dump basically all your resources like that. I mean, he's still in a good position.
I agree. I don't love the play. The only thing I can think of, he doesn't know Luis's deck list, so he thinks that Luis was holding up 3 mana there. It's possible that he thought Luis might have like a Countervailing Winds or something that could deal with the Inferno Jet. But yeah, Luis is actually getting aggressive here because he knows he's got to close out the game before he dies to these Cunning Survivors.
I mean, if Alex bricks off now, I mean, he doesn't really have ways to get in the last damage. Like, if Alex draws a land next turn, this is a game he could lose.
Yeah, he's got a scry, and then maybe a scry on his upkeep if he wants. Luis is he forced to chump? I guess he can. Yeah, Luis is hellbent, so Alex does get to attack with all of his guys. Though he could potentially. I don't think he can die because he's forced to block with the Aerial Guide. If Luis like chains 2 cantrips together somehow, but yeah, he's just gonna go ahead and attack with everything.
If Luis chumps with the Aerial Guide here, he wins the game if he draws a spell to trigger Prowess, right?
It's 10. It's 12 damage. Yep. I thought that he needed 2 more damage, but he doesn't. So Luis just needs to draw a spell here. He's going to sack the Traveler's Amulet to not reveal any information, and he's shuffle his deck, thin his deck before he uses the Scry. So big draw step here. I mean, I think with the Scries, Hayne's pretty likely to win if Luis doesn't draw. Ooh, a redraw. That's kind of exciting.
That's a fun one, yeah.
Cycle decks are so great. They're just so good.
We're both sick because as soon as he drew that, we were both happy. We're just like, yes, I mean, one more time to sweat the draw.
He actually draws an Essence Scatter, which is not the spell he needed. It also makes his Grimstrider smaller, and he can't actually make it any bigger.
Yeah, that's a pretty
probably has to attack with it. Oh man, Luis is now just in a terrible position.
Now, this play, I think, was not good by Luis. I mean, I don't understand sending the 1 Grimstrider. I would send a
Spellweaver. Yeah.
Yeah. Because,
it's a difference in damage, but now he's forced to... Well, I guess
he doesn't have to chomp. I guess he can hold both up because if Hayne doesn't have anything, he can still just chomp with 1, and then it's still lethal next turn. So I guess that's why Luis holds both up here.
Yeah,
like probably only planning to chump 1 survivor. Like if Alex didn't draw a spell and just attack both survivors,
he could double block 1.
Right, I assume he would double block 1 or something like that.
And it looks like Alex got there. That was quite a sweat. A lot of stuff happened right at the very end. You know, Alex once again. It's just part of the blue-red deck and having all the cheap spells. Like every turn, it was like, well, he can do this, he can do that, he can do 2 things. You know, he can try to draw into something that helped him win the game. I think that I'm not sure, but it felt to me like that cycling that Inferno Jet was kind of like a. If he had deck lists, I can't imagine him doing that because he just knows it's going to kill Luis if he gets to untap with his 6 lands.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they sideboard. Like once again, we're looking at pretty much nothing from Luis. I think that. Alex, after seeing 2 Spellweavers, is probably going to stay with the Blazing Volley.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's ecstatic about that Blazing Volley now. If he was questioning it before, now that you know there's 2 Spellweavers.
Yeah, I mean, it's sideboard time. I'm just going over what I got here, Ben.
Yeah, no, I was going to go on a rant about how much I love Spellweaver Eternal. I mean, that card is just like... you know, no matter what kind of blue deck you're playing, if you don't have a lot of spells but you're really aggressive, you know, it does a lot of damage. If it gets in once or twice, it's hard to block sometimes because you never know what they're going to have. If you are a more controlling deck, then you probably have more spells, more ability to grow it. It's not an amazing card, but it's still a solid 2-drop. That's one of my favorite commons in Hour of Devastation.
Yeah, it looks like he switched out a Kindled Fury. I didn't exactly see what he put in, but I guess he figures that he's on the draw, and Luis has cards like Without Weakness in his deck that make it a lot worse.
Yeah, you don't need a trick like that when you're on the draw. You just want to have extra creatures, maybe hit your curve, be able to throw some speed bumps in your opponent's way.
All right, looks like Luis on the play in game 3, and he's got a bunch of medium creatures and no third land. But Alex also has a bunch of medium creatures, so we'll see how this works out. Last game the Cunning Survivors were good, but that was only because he really got far ahead, like on turn 2, turn 3.
We definitely need Luis to draw less Rune Rats and more lands this game.
Yeah, and Alex draws a Puncturing Blow, so that'll give him the ability to deal with maybe Aerial Guide or Sphinx. Looks like he draws into a Splendid Agony, which is actually doesn't line up that well. Normally against blue-red, it's really good because they have lots of the 2/1 prowess guys and a lot of 3-drops that die to it. But Hayne actually doesn't have that much, though he did just draw the Fervent Paincaster, which I'm assuming he's going to slam because it's just so good against the Ruin Rats. So we're going to see basically Luis is probably going to have to draw a land here, or just lose, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be in really bad shape if he doesn't draw a land here.
Maybe this time he'll draw the desert. Okay, he draws the swamps, which is awesome for him. He can attack with both guys, and if Alex blocks, he gets to kill both. Alex has seen the Splendid Agony, though, I think. So.
Yeah, and there's no way Alex is going to block, because he's just assuming he can ping those rats to death. So, I mean,
yep,
blocking wouldn't make any sense.
All right, and looks like Alex just drew a True Heart Twins, so he actually is probably just going to play the Desert and the Cunning Survivor here. Alex isn't under a terrible amount of pressure, and Luis, while he can cast 3 of the spells in his hand, like every turn that goes by, the 3-drops get less good. It's turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. If he keeps playing 3-drops, Alex is going to start playing bigger things. So we'll see how this develops.
Yeah, definitely agree with this. I mean, Alex is not under a ton of pressure. You just get your mana in play now, and then you have a powerful 5-mana creature to play.
Yeah, and he also has the Puncturing Blow, which he can kind of save if he feels like it. Luis is going to keep beating down with the rats. No fear of like a 1-mana cycler here, though it's not even necessarily that great for Hayne,
Yeah, so which creature Luis plays is kind of interesting. He drew the cycler and he wants to cycle it, so I imagine he'll play the Grim Survivor. But, he could go with the Flyer or the 3/3, knowing the Grim Survivor is going to be better later. Because if he cycles next turn and doesn't draw a land for his turn or the cycle, then he wouldn't be playing anything because all his cards cost 3 mana.
Of course.
But at the same time, he wants to cycle that River Serpent because he wants to get lands for that Ominous Sphinx, and he's nowhere near casting the River Serpent.
And actually, like the problem with casting the Bones, the marauding guy, is that it gets brick walled by a lot of 5-drops. But I think that Luis's play is good, assuming Hayne doesn't have a good 5-drop, or Hayne's got a removal spell that he might use and no creature. It turned out that Hayne had like both kind of, and it ended up working out. But Luis ended up just playing an Aerial Guide to try to set up some big attacks. Like Hayne's at 18, so.
So I definitely like just playing Aerial Guide there. The only question really, I think, for Luis that turn was whether he attacks with 1 Rune Rat or not. He's still at 20. He's ahead by 5 life. The second Rune Rat isn't really blocking. It's just back in case Hayne plays a removal. But unless it's a removal that only does 1 point of damage, you've got to assume it's better for Hayne to kill the Aerial Guide than a Rune Rat. So I think Luis probably could have sent 1. But other than that, I mean, the turn is pretty straightforward.
Looks like Hayne went for the Minotaur Sure Shot instead of Puncturing Blow, and he's actually going to get pretty punished by the Hone Kopesh. Looks like Luis can play the Kopesh, equip the Guide, and get in 6 damage. And then also Alex has 2 4-drops in his hand, which he can't like double spell if he draws a land. I'm not sure if it was wrong to play the Sure Shot, because like on board it looks like he can block. But right now he's going to go to 9 life, and the Ruin Rats can also attack. Looks like he's not going to attack though, because he wants to be able to kill the True Heart Twins. Like he's afraid of a big attack from Alex.
Yeah, he keeps holding them both back, and like I said, I'm not sure what's right. I would personally send one of the rats and hold one rat back, but because you're so far ahead. But I understand then you feel kind of silly if the one rat gets picked off by something that does one or something like that, and you end up taking
like
six.
he knows that Alex has Blur of Blades, of course, something like that. Looks like Alex has a pretty straightforward turn. He's probably just going to puncturing blow the aerial guide. He doesn't really have a great attack. I mean, he can like ping Luis for one, but that could essentially be trading damage. So I think he's probably just going to, unfortunately, puncturing blow the aerial guide and pass. Awkwardly, though, like Luis can just re-equip to the Marauder, which is pretty powerful. Like Hayne's at a low enough life that he can't just keep taking damage. And the Ruin Rats, once he gets low enough, the Ruin Rats become like their threat level becomes higher and higher.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's interesting, because with Luis ahead, you want to press with the Rune Rats, but also Luis is stuck on lands and has 4 spells in hand. So Luis kind of wants this game to go long, not short. So even though he's the aggro deck, so there's kind of like a tension between what you want to accomplish turn by turn right now.
Yeah, and Hayne's actually going to make a attack with his Minotaur and a 1/3. Yeah, I like this block from Luis. He like that Minotaur Sure Shot can be good down the line. Like he's got another flyer in his hand. He knows Hayne has a lot of mana. He only takes 1 damage, so he doesn't know Hayne might be wanting to pump a few times, so he saves his life total. And like you said, he can extend the game or he can make it short. Looks like he's going to re-equip and so probably force a block. And he's got the without
the rat
weakness.
Should come this turn now, because if Alex doesn't block this 4/4, he's going all the way down to 5. So I would have definitely sent the rat this time. I think you have to assume that the way Hayne just played, he's going to trade Trueheart for the Bone Stasher, and I don't understand now why the rat didn't come. Also, I mean, it's just a point; it's not a big deal, but.
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where he's not going to block either of these Cunning Survivors, and while he does want to play a later game, like he can still finish Alex, Like it's gonna every turn that goes by, like Hayne's casting 2 spells and he's only casting 1. The race is gonna turn around really, really quick on him. And if Hayne has to play, like sometimes in Magic, even though you want to play a longer game, like if you can pressure the life total, you can make a situation where your opponent has to leave more creatures back than they're comfortable with, which kind of gives him more time to draw lands and whatnot. But he does finally draw a 4th land, and it's an island, which is really important.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes me love Limited so much. In Constructed, I feel like oftentimes your roles are really well defined because, the decks are so focused. But I feel like in Limited, you may see yourself as the aggro deck in the matchup, and you're playing aggressively, but then suddenly it becomes better to play defensively. You know what I mean? To switch for a turn or two. And in this case, I mean, with Luis still at 15 and Alex having like a better late game, I don't know that Alex can really like pressure Luis that much. But I do think that, like, turn by turn, whether those rats attack or block, whether you trade 1 for 1, for both players, I do think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, like we see Alex at 5 and Luis at 15. The game could have easily played out in a way where, like, Alex is at, like, 3 here and Luis is at, like 13 or something. Yeah, and it's like, is that good for Luis or not? Like, he knows that Alex has pretty consistently had 2 or 3 cards in his hand, which are very likely spells, not lands, based on how the game has played out.
And I think a lot of why Luis played very defensively with the rats was because he has a bunch of spells in hand and he wants to extend the game to play them. And
like as soon as Hayne draws another land, like 2 more lands and Hayne's borderline flooded against somebody on 3, even though obviously he can cast more spells, like if Luis has preserved his life total, he thinks he can turn the corner. And his hand is actually pretty good at grinding. Like he's got the good flyer, he's got the sinuous striker. Alex has kind of been really, really not punished, but just he's got the 2 mountains and it's cost him the ability to double spell. He drew a Blur of Blades this turn, so let's see what he does. I think he's gonna likely just puncturing blow the Survivor. The question is he gonna like offer up the trade with the Archer, or is he gonna wait to Blur of Blades? Like he can just attack with the Minotaur and Exert It and the Cunning Survivor, but he could also make like very minimal attacks. Because exerting the Minotaur is like kind of medium. Looks like he's going to attack with everything.
Yeah, so he's willing to trade the Firebrand for the Rat, I guess, which takes away your Blur target. But Blur can hit creatures that have more than 1 toughness too. So it's not like you're killing the Blur if you make the attack. I don't know what I would do if I were Alex in this spot.
I think he's going to make this attack because I think Luis is probably not going to block. Okay, he is going to block. That's actually a pretty good block for Luis for Luis, sorry, against a Blur of Blades. I was gonna say the reason if Alex attacks with the Archer, he could just die on board to like a removal spell from Luis. So I think that's kind of like the reason he wants to stay back. Looks like Luis draws a Essence Scatter.
Yeah, which should make this
an attack.
So that'll make this turn probably just casting the Spellweaver Eternal and leaving Scatter up. And it's kind of interesting because when you're not equipping Hone Copish, you're kind of telegraphing Essence Scatter. But I think the play is still correct because if you can keep Alex from putting a creature on the board, then you're in great shape. I mean, you're on tapping with your 3/3 and your 2/1 to your knowledge.
So if Alex draws a spell that costs 4 or less, he's in really good shape. Well, I spoke too soon. Like I spoke about the Desert last game, he actually draws Traveler's Amulet. It does ping Luis for 1, and he's going to put... Actually, I guess that is reasonable because it does put Luis to... what, 5 life, which means he's actually just dead to the Emberhorn Minotaur alone.
Yeah, I think that actually Alex is going to win this game unless Luis top decks a removal or a point of damage. It's kind of funny because like the game, there's so many take one, deal one, take one, deal one, block, don't block, and it's like going to come down to Xaxes this game pretty much. Yeah,
it's definitely this is actually like kind of one of the best matches of Limited I've seen in a while. I mean, I don't watch that much coverage, but it seemed to me like these games were super interesting, and I couldn't even really figure out what either player was supposed to do. I guess he's not dead on board because he can double block the Minotaur. Oh no, the zombie can't block.
Yeah, he can't block.
No,
and I mean, listen, even though this line left Luis dead on board, I don't disagree with leaving the Scatter up. You don't know that your opponent's last card in hand is Blur of Blades. You have no reason to believe that, and being able to stop them from putting a creature on the board in this position was really important. So that part I agree with. But it is kind of funny that the 1 point from the last Rune Rat attack, the one turn where it didn't attack or block that I really thought it should have attacked, might have changed the game. Because
the Marauder would have been lethal with the Hone Kopesh.
And obviously, if Alex is 1 lower, then he's going to play differently. He's not going to leave himself dead on board. But if he can't make that attack and then he has to chump the Marauder, now he can't lethal Luis back necessarily. So it's just a little bit different of a game, maybe. And I'm not sure that Luis would have won, and I'm not even sure that my play is right. Luis is definitely better than me at Magic.
It's kind of weird because we see both these players who we respect, and like it looks like they're kind of making mistakes, but it's just so hard to play that kind of match of Magic when there's so much going on, especially in a game of Limited when like one person is screwed but racing, and the other person is like has a bunch of lands but actually only 2 red sources and whatnot. But anyway, it looks like Alexander Hayne is going to take the first camera match against Luis Scott-Vargas, so I guess we're up 1-0. And
no, it's 1-1. I think Ifro beat Siggy.
Okay, so it's going to be 1-1 going into round 2. All right, we'll be back with the next round of TDSL.